Good morning, everybody. Today we're happy to have Gautam Bisht, who's been at Pacific Northwest National Lab for 4 years, and before that at Lawrence Berkeley. He received a PhD in Civil and Environmental Engineering from MIT in 2010, and his main area is developing global terrestrial biophysical models using high-performance computing. And he's the principal investigator for the DOE SciDAC project to develop terrestrial dynamical cores for E3SM, which he'll be telling us about today. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks, Mark. Actually, that was the SciDAC 4 project, and this is a SciDAC 5 project in which we are developing a river dicore to capture the dynamics of compound flooding in E3SM. I will be presenting these results on behalf of a growing number of team comprising of graduate students, postdocs, earth scientists, software engineer, and applied mathematicians at PNNL, Berkeley, Lannell, University of Colorado Boulder, Buffalo, Alabama, and Coher. As Mark mentioned, this is funded through the SciDAC program, which funds, which provides the funding through BER and Oscar. Before I delve into the project, I think it would be good to give a brief overview of what the SciDAC programs are. In the DOE's Office of Science, there is the Advanced Scientific Computing Research, which does fundamental research in applied maths and develop numerical methods and tools and softwares, while there are other programs like Basic Energy Sciences, BER, Fusion Energy Sciences. These do fundamental theoretical research in their respective areas, and a portion of them do computational or computational science, like in our case, development of E3SM. And in 2002, there was a report that initiated the development of the SciDAC program, where these sciences, domain sciences, could leverage the developments happening in Oscar to hasten their computational methods. Also tying in with the facilities such as NERSC, OLCF, ALCF. Now, so the SciDAC started in 2001. Unlike most BER projects, these are 5-year projects. They are now in the 5th incarnation. As Hui mentioned in a couple of weeks ago in her presentation, SciDAC presentation, right now we have 2 institutes, SciDAC Institutes Fast Math and Rapids. And these institutes help provide collaboration with other partnership programs, in our case BER, and there are 7 projects including this one. So now moving into what this project is focused about, we are looking into compound flooding. And the IPCC report on risk in 2012 described compound events could be, as the schematic is showing here on the left, 2 simultaneous events occurring, such as coastal flooding due to storm surge, as well as fluvial flooding. Or it could be a combination of events imposed on top of a background, such as rainfall falling on already saturated soils. Or it could be even as a combination of multiple average events contributing to extreme flooding, being shown schematic on the bottom right. Compound flooding, they pose an impact to not only human but also the natural system. Here I'm showing an example of an atmospheric rain event that happened in last year, June, where in the Yellowstone National Park, in 10th to 13th of June, there was 2 or 3 inches of rain that fell on top of warmer overnight temperatures, which resulted in significant large amount of snow melt, resulting in historic flooding. which is being shown in a schema in the graph here, which is the gauge height at one of the USGS stations, and the blue is the height in feet of water during this event, which reached a 14 feet height, and it broke the previous 100-year record. Um, the compound floodings not only have impact on the, they also have impacts not only on the flow, but also on sediment transport. An observational study by Morar et al. In 2017, they looked at extreme El Nino events and looked at how sediment is transported during these events. And they found that the export of the sediments can be up to 3 to 60 times larger than the baseline. The figures on the left are showing CDFs, cumulative distributed functions, which are normalized for water discharge on the top, and the suspended sediments on the bottom. The gray lines are for historic events, and the colored lines are for during the extreme El Nino events. There is a significant increase in not only the water transport, but also of the sediment transport, as shown here. And compared to the baseline, here, which is in black, the red bars are showing, red is for the El Nino event in 97, 98, and the blue is for 82 and 83, the extreme El Nino events. And you see a large increase, which is happening spatially. So given these importance, we have identified a few scientific and computational bottlenecks in the current version of E3SM. Specifically, Mozart's assumption of a subgrid structure limits its finest resolution to be 5 kilometers. There are also limitations on the physics, such that the backwater propagation right now can only occur along a river network. There is an instantaneous exchange of water between the river channel and the floodplain. Density-dependent flows are not included, which are necessary to be able to resolve saltwater intrusion. The computational bottlenecks that are present in the current version of the river component are that we only have one spatial and temporal discretization schemes that are available, and we cannot test how changing the numerical algorithm will change the accuracy, or there is algorithmic scalability. And lastly, there is no support for heterogeneous computing in the current version of Mozart. So the project has 3 overarching objectives. First, which is being shown the schematic on the left, what we want to do is develop what we are calling a river dicore, RDycore, to solve fluvial flooding, and coastal flooding, also combined with compound flooding. We want to be able to not only solve flooding, but also the sediment dynamics and riverine saltwater intrusion. We want to solve this on a variable resolution mesh, and we will also explore the adaptive mesh refinement in this work. The next objective is to develop this RDycore so it works on the heterogeneous computing architectures and explore algorithms that are efficient and scalable. And the third objective is, lastly, once we have this model, we want to study how compound flooding, sediment dynamics, and riverine saltwater intrusion is changing in the future. So the 3 foci of the research are basically which directly map onto the project objectives are to develop this RDycore. The physics formulations that we are going to use are shallow water equations for the flow, advective diffusion transport equations for the sediment dynamics. We want to solve the model on a variable resolution mesh, and we will have a baseline mesh being generated by the jigsaw, and we'll try to do AMR to refine the mesh as needed. We will be developing this RDycore in open software development framework, which is standard. We would be exploring two portable numerical solver libraries, PETSc and libCEED, to provide hardware portability to be able to run on GPUs and CPUs. We plan to do extensive model verification. This is to just ensure that our code implementation is correct. After having done that, we will do validation in two steps. We will be benchmarking the RDycore against existing either idealized problems or existing models for certain configurations. And we will be performing model validations, comparing the model's performance against observations. On the computational sides, we would explore how model performance scales as you increase the number of cores. It could be CPUs, GPUs, as well as if different algorithms have different scalabilities. And lastly, to be able to run simulations to study how under future scenarios the compound flooding and its impacts will evolve. So we have been in this project for now 10 months now, and I will give you now examples of what we have done in this time frame. And I have in these schematics out here, I have names of team members who are actually leading. I will not be able to call them out on each slide, but they are here. So we have developed an open source RDycore library. It is in C with some interface in Fortran. We are solving shallow water equations. We have done some code verification exercises. While the model is being developed, we have looked at existing tools to develop some benchmarks or to be able to drive the RDycore. So example, we have looked at the Houston flooding. We have another model where we are looking at idealized dam break problems. We are looking at sediment dynamics in Amazon, and we have done some rain on snow event simulations using ELM. The jigsaw meshing library, which is used to generate meshes, global meshes for the MPAS, is being served as a framework for our work also. We are extending it to have very ultra high resolution meshes, going up to orders of tens of meters for this project. For the discretization part of it, what we have done is we have taken the libCEED library, which was developed under the ECP project. It was to provide portability, hardware portability for finite element methods, in which the function evaluations at different quadratures are happen agnostic of the hardware. We have now extended it to use finite element methods, and we have made similar developments for PETSc to be able to call libCEED for the finite volume methods. Lastly, we have been in this short span been able to put RDycore within E3SM. I would not say it is coupled. It is right now RDycore is compiled within the framework and it can run. There is right now no exchange of information between the RDycore and other components, but we can run on Perlmutter, Summit, Crusher, Frontier using both CPUs and GPUs. Now, in the remainder of 8-9 minutes, I would give a little bit more detail on a few of these developments that we have done. So we have implemented a first order finite volume method and a first order explicit time discretization method for the RDycore. It works both on triangles and quad meshes, as well as combined or mixed meshes of combination of both triangular and quads. We have looked at two previously published studies or benchmark problems, which is a 4-mount problem in which you have 4 mounts within the domain. You have some water in the certain part of the mesh and you let it go, and the other is a partial dam break problem, where again there is water present in part of the domain and there is a break in the dam and it evolves. What we have then looked at is computed a numerical true solution in which we have discretized dx as very fine and at a very small dt as a true solution, and then we have coarsened out the dx and dy and see how the error uh, behaves. And in this case, we are looking at the L1 error, and I'm just showing the height variable that is being computed. We see it scales is 1 for the 4 mounts problem, but it is much less than 1 in case of the partial dam break problem. And in the last 2 weeks, we have identified it is mostly related to how the boundary condition is implemented. We haven't figured out the fix for it, but at least we have identified where the error, why this is degraded. The benchmark problems that I mentioned that we have been developing are, in this case, we have used OFM model, overland flow model. It's a finite volume model for shallow water equation, which is actually serving as the initial baseline for the RDycore development. We have looked at Houston flooding during Harvey. Its schematic is being shown here. And more zoom in of the domain is here in the second plot. At 30-meter resolution, you have approximately 3 million grid cells. What we have now we have explored is, if we coarsen out the mesh, what is the impact of the simulated quantities? And one of the metrics is we are looking at discharge. The blue is the discharge at this finest 3 million grid cell. And then as we coarsen it out, while trying to accurately capture the stream network, we see the performance is degrading. And what we have identified is that in this domain, there are 2 dams. So we need to accurately be able to capture those dams and not just the natural features to be able to accurately capture the hydrograph here. Moving on to another benchmark that we have been developing, we have used a Telemac Mascaret model. It is a sediment, a shallow water equation, and an advective diffusion transport model for the sediment dynamics. And we have applied it to a watershed in Amazon. The schematics on the left, or the maps on the left, are showing the water height simulated on the 1st of January and at the end of April. The redder colors are the hotter colors are higher head, water head. The Amazon River runs on top, and as the waterhead in the Amazon River increases, it flushes into the Genuca catchment that we are studying. A 10-year simulation of the flow has been completed, and we see very good comparisons with the observations being shown in the top these 2 panels. The blue is the data, and while the red is the model at 2 different stations. We are still performing calibration of the sediment dynamics. One of the snapshots of sediment dynamics is being shown here is suspended sediment loads being flushed into as the Amazon River is pushing in. We still need to do calibration for the sediment dynamics model to be able to more accurately capture the observed data. Regarding the meshing infrastructure, as I mentioned, we are leveraging Jigsaw, which serves as the basis for the MPAS meshes. And what we have done is The Jigsaw library in the ICOM project has been recently extended to provide uniform meshes for the land, river, as well as the ocean. And we are now leveraging it even further by developing the ultra high resolution, which we are calling resolving the domain at up to orders of 10 meters. The new developments also on the Jigsaw are related to we can now output meshes in an Exodus format that PETSc can directly use. Moving on to the last two slides of my presentation regarding, so this slide sort of summarizes what our exascale strategy is. Unlike Scream or Omega, here in this project, we not only need portability, hardware portability, but we also need algorithms. So we are relying on numerical libraries to be able to provide them. So in our case, for example, the shallow water nonlinear equation time evolution can be written by dx dt is equal to some function of x. What PETSc provide us is multiple time integrators. So in a typical framework, you would write a function f, and PETSc right now has backends where you can use CUDA or HIP, or you can call COCOs, which can then call even more backends to be able to solve this. So you can run on NVIDIA, AMD, or Intel GPUs. The issue is that this function right now is computed on CPU, and then it can get transferred onto GPU. So there is a lot of movement. That is where we are leveraging libCEED, which allows you to compute the function either on the CPU or on the GPU and let it there, and then PETSc can do the time integration. And as I mentioned, we have extended libCEED to be able to solve the finite volume methods rather than the finite element for which it was developed under the ECP project. Lastly, we have done, as I mentioned, we have been able to put RDycore within E3SM. The schematic here is showing right now RDycore is sitting in under ELM. What a typical case is done is you compile on a given hardware or a given supercomputer, you compile PETSc, then you install RDycore. Then right now we create a case, E3SM case. We have to update the macro files to correctly point to where the PETSc and the RDycore are installed. And right now, then you run a simulation. RDycore can initialize, run, and shut off cleanly. We can run on GPUs, as I mentioned, on both the NVIDIA and AMD, on Perlmutter and Summit, Crusher, and Frontier. There is no exchange of information right now between any other components. In this work, what we have done is we have exploited the runtime configurability of PETSc. So for example, if we were running on a CPU, the E3SM exec has no other command line arguments. If you want to use COCOs, you're telling PETSc what type of vector you want to create. In this case, it is a COCOS type or a CUDA type or a HIP type. So there is no code modification that is going to happen. And this is how you can explore hardware portability across various systems. And that's all I have. I'll be happy to take any questions. And I believe 5 of our team members will be at the all hands upcoming meeting, and we will be able to discuss in person if you are more interested. Thank you.